Two friends, Claire and Vanessa, met in a cafe to discuss the upcoming reunion of classmates, share their news and just chat. They had known each other for a long time, as they had been friends since high school. After discussing Claire's recent vacation trip, Vanessa asked, "Claire, do you remember Esther, the one who walked through high school in her old clothes?" Yes, I remember," replied her friend. "And why did you think of that ragamuffin?" "Can you believe we never called her to a reunion? It's been 10 years though, hasn't it? It's really interesting to see what she looks like now. And just for fun, I bet she got fat from cheap food and probably wears secondhand clothes," Vanessa said. "Well, don't call her. Why embarrass yourself?" said Claire capriciously. "Think about it. We'll get together in a decent group, all as people, and this collective farm girl will be with us. It would be embarrassing in front of the waiters." "Come on, don't be dramatic. It'll be fun. There'll be someone to laugh at." "Wait a minute." Vanessa poked her finger at the touchpad of her phone because her fingernails were too long. She didn't immediately manage to log onto the social networking site, but eventually she did. "Look, found her page. Wow." "Well, what's so interesting?" muttered Claire. She still really didn't like her friend's idea. There are flowers on her avatar, kittens and puppies on a wall. A sure sign that you can't show off your looks and you don't have any accomplishments. "Okay, that's it. Send her an invitation." "And do you know where?" Vanessa grilled contemptuously. "Well, so where to?" her friend clarified. "To Esther. It's the swankiest restaurant in town. Can you imagine how funny it would be? Our loser Esther at Esther," grinned Vanessa. Claire curled her lips skeptically. "And you think they'll even let her in the door? Do you know what kind of people are there? Esther's security won't let her anywhere near it." "They'll let her through." Vanessa was already getting really amused. "I'll alert the guards." "Oh, I wish Esther would say no," said Claire in disgust. "Vanessa, I don't understand what got into you. Why did you decide to call her? After all, you just can't go down like that. We haven't talked to any losers yet. In fact, let's get out of here." "To the club?" asked Vanessa, businesslike. "Yes, to the club," replied Claire. The friends quickly packed up, left the cafe, got into Claire's car, and headed for the most popular nightclub in town. At this time, Esther, the girl her friends were discussing in the cafe, was at home talking to her husband. Esther did not like social networks. She got used to them, but she could not love this newfangled virtual life with its unwritten laws. "Esther, you should have Instagram," her husband reproached her affectionately. "And what a typical woman's hobby. Shoot photos, all sorts of publish. Many girls like to put out food." "Come on, it's not my thing, Thomas." She waved it off, laughing. "Too bad," my husband sighed. "Honestly, I would have felt better about you. You'd be sitting on the couch pointing your finger at the phone. Otherwise, you always want to go to the extreme. You invented a fun thing for yourself. You got a dog." Esther brushed her husband off again and opened her laptop to check her work email, and then she noticed a notification about a new message on the social network. She opened the app and there was an unread message dangling in the inbox list. It was from Vanessa. "Vanessa? Who is that?" Esther pondered, but the last name was clearly familiar to her. Esther quickly ran her eyes over the text of the message. "Esther, hi. Meet the classmates on March 4th at 7 p.m. at the Esther restaurant. Come." "Ah, now it all makes sense," the beautiful young woman said aloud. "What, honey? I'm sorry. Don't you get it?" interjected Thomas. "It's all right. I was just thinking out loud," the woman replied quietly. Esther slammed the lid of the laptop as if hoping to fool herself that there was no message. In fact, it was all in her head. Now she remembered Vanessa, though frankly, she wished she had never remembered. But ruthless memories had already unfolded before her, the chronicles of the past. Here was the small, cramped apartment where she, Esther, had spent her difficult childhood. A childhood, of course, was happy. Mom brewed the world's most beautiful strawberry jam. Dad read books aloud, and on weekends, the parents with Esther and their youngest daughter, Lily, would go camping. Even if it was a trip to the nearest forest, quite small and not scary, it was still fun to run between the trees and gather mushrooms. And as darkness fell, to build a fire and bake potatoes in it. Daddy tuned his old guitar from his student days and sang his favorite songs. And then she and her mother talked for a long time about the expeditions they had been on, but most of all about the most important one, the one in which the parents had met. How happy mom and dad were telling their daughters about their love, about the happy, unforgettable moments in their lives. And then the expeditions ran out, or simply geologists became not so necessary. Parents were teaching in colleges at that time, but the salary of a teacher was small. The money for a family of 4 was catastrophically insufficient. Then Esther's dad looked for any part-time job he could get. The man began unloading railroad cars at night. He would come home in the morning and literally fell off his feet from fatigue, fell on the couch without undressing, but could not sleep for long. After a couple of hours, he had to go to college and there to lecture students. Esther was painful to look at his father. Dad's dear, beloved face had changed a lot. It was pale and gaunt, and the circles under his eyes never seemed to disappear. In the morning, the girl would wake up early and run to the kitchen to boil the kettle and make breakfast for her father. In the meantime, her mother rubbed some healing ointments on her husband's back and persuaded him not to work so hard. But the head of the family did not listen to his wife's instructions. He could not do otherwise. His duty to his family, his tremendous love for his wife and daughters, made the man ignore the fatigue and the pain in his back and arms. In the evening, he would go to the train station again and carry weights to earn money for the family. Then father began to drink a little at a time. He himself said that a small dose of alcohol helped to dull the fatigue. But Esther knew that his father began to drink out of desperation. He, a graduate who had excelled at his job, was no longer needed, not in demand. He didn't give up. He found another job, and when he realized that he could not make much money as a teacher, he went to make money as a longshoreman. But there wasn't much more money. It was still far less than he needed to make a decent living. Daddy, her strong and brave daddy, accustomed only to clenching his teeth tighter and throwing himself into every difficulty, was tired. He was cracking up, and only booze was trying him on with reality. Fortunately, after a course of treatment for alcohol addiction, Dad never touched alcohol again. Mom, after a hard day at college, ran around giving private lessons to students at home. Tutoring didn't bring in much money, and she came home around 11 o'clock at night. Now the parents had no time for hiking in the woods and singing with the guitar. In fact, they had no time for children either. Although they were adults, honest and hardworking people, they worked hard to feed their families, so they had no time or energy left to talk to their children. They did not even have the energy to ask how they were doing, how their day was going, or if everything was all right. So they never knew how hard it was for Esther at school. She had always been a tall girl, and that alone would have been enough to make her classmates ridicule her. But when poverty came into the family and there was no money to buy the rapidly growing teenager new clothes, the taunts of classmates intensified. Kind neighbors tried to help in any way they could. They gave Esther what their own children had grown out of. These things certainly were nice, neat, but already worn and long out of fashion. Esther's classmates called her clothes shameful rags. She tried, of course, to ignore the mockery of her peers, but the teens were only angry. To get any kind of reaction from her, they used all their ingenuity. Esther's textbooks and notebooks were definitely torn or often found in the trash. The most humiliating thing was getting her personal belongings out of the rest of the garbage in the bucket, to the laughter of the cruel children laughing at her. School supplies were deliberately spoiled, and the bag she carried to school was often used as a soccer ball. The teachers preferred not to notice this harassment. Perhaps they too, exhausted by the lack of money, simply did not want to get involved with unnecessary problems that did not affect them personally in any way. In spite of everything, Esther studied beautifully, bringing home good grades and a lot of letters of commendation for her studies. At home, Esther could not complain. Her conscience did not allow her to burden her parents with her problems. It was hell. Esther thought, finally waking up from the creepy memories. It was my own personal hell, and now they have the nerve to invite me to their meeting. She was about to turn down the invitation and then block her former classmate out altogether. Her lips were dry from the excitement of the memories, and she needed to go to the kitchen and get a drink of water. Right now, not because she was so thirsty. Rather, I needed to walk around the apartment, see familiar objects, and realize that the past with its nightmare was behind me. Esther got up from the table and headed to the exit of the room. As she passed the closet, she saw her reflection and involuntarily stopped, looking at herself as if she was seeing her for the first time. Then a shy smile appeared on the girl's lips at first, but then more and more confidently, Esther wondered. A few days have passed. Homecoming day was coming. All these days, Esther thought about whether or not to go to the reunion. Esther looked at her husband again, looking for support. No, Thomas, I can't. I can't be there, and I don't want to. Come on, Esther. He took his wife's hand. Her palm was colder than ice. Why can't you? It's been so many years. Exactly. It's been so many years, and I still remember everything. And it still hurts. And hurts me, wife said wistfully. Well, what can I tell you, Esther? Sure, you can take your clothes off right now, wash off your makeup and stay home, and I won't say a word to you. But then you might never get rid of that pain. Esther, sometimes we need to face our past to let go from us forever. As you stand here dreading that encounter, you're still the same girl who was poisoned by a pack of violent teenagers. But you're all grown up now, aren't you? The husband asked. I don't know. Sometimes I don't think so. Esther lowered her head. I know, Thomas said softly. You've grown up, but you haven't realized it yet. Do you know when you will? When you see the people who hurt you and suddenly you realize that you don't care about them anymore. Not at all. You know, you're a smart girl. You've done a lot in your life in such a short time. He handed his wife his coat and added, Get dressed and don't be afraid of anything. Remember, you're doing it for yourself first and foremost, and no one else. In the gathering dusk, the Esther restaurant looked like a majestic ship, all glowing with holiday illumination. Just looking at the shimmering lights was enough to make one forget the rain and wind that had been pouring all day today. People abandoned their cars in the parking lots and almost ran to the huge transparent doors of the restaurant to avoid getting wet. In the coziest corner of the room, at the panoramic window overlooking the river, sat a company of 12 people. Vanessa, you shouldn't have called Esther. If I'd known what you were going to do, I wouldn't have come at all. The girl was bullied at school and now she's at it again, said the thick man in the dark suit sullenly. Well, it's not too late to leave, Lucas, Vanessa snickered. Come on, people, this is going to be fun, or have you forgotten how to enjoy life in your jobs? That's not the point. The way I see it, Vanessa, you're still entertained by school pranks. It's time to grow up, Lucas replied calmly. You'd think you weren't in them, connected Claire to the conversation, glancing mockingly at her former classmate. I participated, but it's only now that I realize that we behaved like animals. I don't know about you, but I'm ashamed of how I was. Esther's parents worked 2 jobs to provide for the family. My mother and father used to scold me at home. After school, when they saw Esther running home in tears and with a messy backpack, they said that in this life, things don't always work out the way we want them to. Yes, the situation can change at any moment, change dramatically. I understand that now. I have 2 daughters myself, and we had fun watching the girl, huddled at the last desk, not raising her eyes. But against all odds, she did well in school and never once complained about us. Yes, I'm ashamed of myself and my indifference. If Esther does come to this party, I won't let you hurt her, Vanessa. Grow up, Lucas said firmly. I'm ashamed too, Lucas's neighbor, a slender blonde guy, spoke up. Vanessa, I think that since you invited Esther, we should ask her to forgive us for everything. What? Vanessa gasped, unable to believe her ears. For the first time since first grade, someone dared to contradict her. To her, Vanessa, the leader and the undisputed authority of the whole class. What's the matter with you? Claire tried to be indignant, but was stopped by a wave of her friend's hand. Tell me, George, where did you fly in from for the reunion? Asked Vanessa ironically. From London. You know I work there, the blonde shrugged. And you make good money, I guess. Passerby on the street might be misled by your clothes. But I know how much your watch costs, and I've seen your car too. And it's not cheap. Vanessa squinted. Where are you going with this? Frowned George. Don't interrupt. And Lucas has his own dental clinic, and he makes a lot of money too. So why should we, rich, well-to-do people, ask for forgiveness from some beggar girl? She's probably mopping floors in some soup kitchen, and they let her take home leftovers for it. Vanessa leaned forward and almost knocked the finest crystal flute off the table. You never did grow up, Vanessa. George looked at her with regret and contempt at the same time. Lucas and I will stay here, but only so that neither of you will have a chance to hurt Esther again. Even if Esther mops floors, as you put it in the mess hall, she is first and foremost a human being just like us. Claire looked at the huge wall clock. Your Esther is running late, she remarked with a nervous chuckle. Yes, she probably won't come at all, and you're fighting over her. Shame on you. At that time, Esther entered the restaurant. She stopped for a moment in the center of the room. Then she took a deep breath and boldly stepped to the table where her former classmates were sitting. Hello, she said. Her response was a look of bewilderment. "Good evening. You must have the wrong table," Lucas smiled. Esther returned his smile. "No, Lucas, I'm not mistaken." Lucas squinted, gazing into the face of the beautiful stranger. "Esther?" he wondered. George at the same instant jumped up from his seat and almost shouted in amazement. "My God, Esther, is that you?" "Hello, George," replied Esther with a smile. "Oh, Esther," as he hugged his former classmate, the man could not control his elation. Esther, who was laughed at and mocked at school, now stands before him in a beige dress that accentuates her chiseled figure, with luxurious dark hair that falls carelessly over her shoulders and back, with a delicate face and little noticeable makeup. "You're beautiful," he said sincerely. Vanessa sat almost huddled into the couch. Her sharp fingernails dug mercilessly into the upholstery. "You'll ruin your manicure," whispered Claire. She too was staring intently at what she and Vanessa used to call a loser. Though she couldn't believe what her eyes saw, deep down Claire rejoiced. Vanessa's idea had failed miserably. The trick had failed. She had just embarrassed herself in front of everyone. The waiter came to the table, holding a huge basket full of white orchards. "Excuse me," he turned to Esther. "Flowers for you from Thomas." "Thomas?" shouted Vanessa to the whole room. "That one?" "Yes," said Esther modestly. "That's my husband." Vanessa leaned back exhaustedly on the couch cushions. "Maybe there are children too," Vanessa persisted. "Yes, of course. My son Grayson, 5 years old." "Anything else of interest?" replied Esther calmly. "Yes, of course. How did you manage to marry so well? Share the secret," said Vanessa wearily. "There's no secret. I graduated from the University of Trade and Economics, where I met my future husband," smiled Esther. "And where did you get the money to go to school? I remember your parents didn't make much money." "By the way, how are they? Are they still alive?" Vanessa persisted. "Vanessa, don't cross that line," said Lucas sharply. "Lucas, it's okay," said Esther calmly. "I did well in school, so I had no doubt getting into university for free, and I graduated with honors. My parents are just fine, thank you." Now they flew together with Grayson to warm countries to rest a little from the gray city life. "What a scoundrel," she whispered to her friend. "The first man in town she's taken. Living with her relatives on her husband's money, and had a child. That's how sly she is. And what about her? Who is she? She's nobody." "And who are you? What have you accomplished?" Claire didn't hold back. Vanessa just looked at her friend, or already ex-girlfriend, angrily, and was silent. "Harry," Esther turned to the waiter, "can the flowers stand in your office?" The waiter interrupted her. "Yes." Esther was a little embarrassed. "If you can just let them stay there for a while, okay?" "Esther," the waiter Harry replied in a slight bow, "this is your restaurant. Your word is law." "There's Esther. There's a good girl. So well groomed, you've shown up here living with your parents on your husband's money," Vanessa squealed, trying to hurt Esther. "Vanessa, nothing in life comes easy, or just like that. I make good money, and so does my husband. My parents live their life to their satisfaction. I'm grateful to them for my happy childhood in a loving family. I was motivated to reach the heights of my life, to help my parents and live in pleasure. I achieved everything I dreamed of. Yes, my beloved spouse helped me in this. That's what family is for, to support and believe in each other. It was his faith that led me to success. Vanessa, I wish you and all those gathered around this table today love, kindness, and prosperity." Esther raised her champagne glass and continued. "Thank you for the invitation, guys. It was really nice to see you. I have to go now. I'm sorry. And you guys have fun. It's all on the house. And before I go, let's drink to the reunion. Many of you I'm very happy to see, and some of you I'm grateful to go home with a light heart. Bless you." "Esther, thank you for the warm welcome. You forgive us, darling, for our school years. Silly we were, children," Lucas apologized. "Lucas, dear, I don't hold a grudge. It was good to see you all. By the way, guys, I've arranged for each of you to get a present from me. A favorite guest card. It gives 50% off the menu and bar. Come, we'd be glad to see you." Esther moved away from Vanessa's table, where there was complete silence. At the exit, the receptionist handed the woman her coat. After putting on her coat, Esther gave the directions to the staff, waved goodbye, and walked out into the street. Standing on the doorstep of her restaurant, Esther breathed in a breath of fresh air. The mood was excellent. Esther got behind the wheel of her car, which was parked at the entrance, and made a call. "Honey, is everything all right?" asked Thomas anxiously. "Yes, my love, don't worry. Thanks for the flowers. Thanks for everything. I'll be home soon. Love you," she said fondly and rolled leisurely out of her restaurant courtyard. "Aren't your eyes getting tired of looking?" laughed Claire, turning to Vanessa, who was literally sizzling Esther's car. The assembled company of former classmates laughed. "I propose to raise a glass to the hostess of this cozy establishment. Esther is proof that you should always go forward despite life's obstacles. To Esther, to the fact that she, having become a respected, successful woman, remained human." George proclaimed a toast, and everyone supported his speech, clinking their glassware. Only Vanessa sat at the window motionless, as if unaware of her surroundings. She wondered what she had done wrong in her life.